Om pramadena na sandeha kim karishyami vrittiman utpadyante viliyante buddhascha yata jale. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. Ignorance is unreal, and therefore, how can it cause you any real doubt or fear? Therefore, what does the yogi do with this mind and its sankalpas? He allows them to rise spontaneously, then dissolves them back into the mind from which they came at the end of the day, like bubbles into water. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So with a fitting sloka from the Avadhuta Gita, from the likes of Ashtavakra Samhita, which is very reminiscent of the dissolution of the mind stream retreat that we just had together, many of you coming from far places to be here at class with us. And then we looked at the dissolution of the mind stream, this rising of vibrations in the mind, how the yogi deals with it as compared to how most people deal with them. The chitta vrittis, well, I might show you that 2 Sundays from now. Yogi deals with it in this way, just watches them rise as if they were unreal and phenomena, and then just tucks them back into the mind at the end of the day like bubbles into water. Buddhascha yata jale. Jale is water. So in that way, we've come off this dissolution of the mind stream retreat where we looked at 6 or 7 different darshanas. And the Sunday prior to that, Saturday and Sunday prior to that, when we had the conclusion of the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, if you'll remember, we had looked pretty much in awe of this Upanishad turning tantric on us and coming up with mentions of Kundalini and its chakras and how to start at the 3rd chakra and raise everything up, as if they just disregarded the first 2 chakras in the Upanishads. It all started with waking up the prana and then taking that up the hollow stalk into the heart, into the throat, into the crown of the head, through the 3rd eye. So all of that was seen by us as an Upanishadic version of Kundalini Yoga, concentrating on the centers that it thinks is most important, as if sort of like going to the Sadanga Yoga in the Akshya Upanishad and other Upanishads, which call it 6-limb instead of 8-limb. So they feel you have the yamas and yamas already together by the time you come to Vedanta, is what I've always thought. So you're already nonviolent and truthful and aren't coveting things that aren't real, but to speak of other people's possessions. And so they just start you right off at the prana. So that's become a very important feature in looking at these, what they affectionately call minor Upanishads, the ones that weren't commented on by Shankara. And we finished one of those then at this last visit, which we're back here now in Hawaii at Kedarnath Center. And I see the beautiful shrine behind me with all the beautiful images, which will be worshipped soon in what's called Navaratri. We have a Durga Puja coming up. The 9 days and 9 nights of worship of Divine Mother. Very unique to India and to Indian religion both, is this Divine Mother worship where she is seen as all. Saham, she is, I am her, she is everything. And it's in that vein that the idea of projection, sustaining, of withdrawing, are like three functions under her design. Like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are her three sons. The avatars come out of them, go back into them, and then she uses them to wake up cycles of creation, sustain them, dissolve them back in. There's that key word again. And this is all under the behest of the Divine Mother Shakti, Mahashakti or Mahamaya, worshipped by all the great beings and by the gods. And when she was here recently as Sri Sharda Devi, Holy Mother, then you had a few of those great souls writing songs about her. See if I can get this out early so I don't forget to sing something. Writing songs about her like Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogendra Pujam Yugadharma Patrim Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vijnana Datrim Pranamami Param Jananim Jagatam. Om. In which one of the direct cycles of Sri Ramakrishna is saying, "O propitious goddess Sharada, killer of misery in souls resigned." Means that you have to resign yourself to her 100%, and then she'll destroy your sufferings. Savior of religion in every age. So she comes from age to age, sometimes veiled, which is another verse I could sing, and takes declining religion, and usually with the help of one of her great sons, like at the end of each age, like Rama and Krishna and so forth. Then she resurrects religion, brings it back to the fore, in the minds of those again who are resigned, who love her as the ultimate primal power. Because Brahman is beyond power and non-power, and she represents Brahman the best in the three worlds. Killer of misery and souls resigned, by saints and sages worshipped, O mother kind. So throughout the ages, she's got all these great souls adoring her. And they come with her from age to age to help her resist this decline of righteousness, the Dharma, which we'll be studying about today. So with that Navaratri in our minds coming up soon, we'll have our Durga Puja on October 1st up at the other center. And there'll be a complete, full-blown new altar resurrected up there, constructed. And we will worship her over those 9 days and 9 nights as the mother of projection, sustenance, and dissolution. We're talking about. So that brings us to this name of this class, Naham, Kaham, and Saham. And when I say there'll be 3 classes now, because that'll be announced, and I'm announcing it for the first time now to all of the students watching, is that the Naham portion of that will be today. And then next Sunday, actually Saturday and Sunday, will be the seminar, which is Father Truth, Mother Wisdom, Brother Dharma. Did I get it right? That'll be the seminar next week, in which we will plunge deeply into this beautiful trinity or trilogy or triputi that will offer forth so many gems using the transformation of the goddess chart, which we haven't looked at for so many years now. So all of these things, write them down in your schedule, because they're coming at you just one Sunday, Saturday, Sunday after another. So this Sunday Naham, next Sunday taken up with a seminar. The following 2 Sundays then will be Kaham on the 2nd, Saham on the 9th. Kaham, Naham today means not this. You have to find out what I'm not. So I've coined that phrase. You must know what you're not in order to know who you are. I did that because so many teachers I heard in the 70s when Ramana Maharshi was getting more popular in the West were saying, who am I, who am I, who am I? And they're jumping to this question as if they could expect Westerners who are not even yet in the know that they're not anything physical, they're not anything energetical, and they're not thought. Matter, energy, and thought, you are not. There's a good bumper sticker for you. Matter, energy, and thought, you are not. Naham, or na, means no or not. And we'll look into that today. So you can't actually just expect people to give up everything that they think they are, or what they deem is important, and all of a sudden say, who am I, who am I, who am I, and expect them to get anywhere very quickly, very deeply, when they're still hanging on to things that some authority hasn't come along and told them, well, wait a minute, you're not those things. So we just chanted, what does the yogi do with his mind's thoughts and sankalpas? He just lets them rise and fall. But he makes sure when they fall that he dissolves them back in to their source. Because the mind will keep producing and then quit producing, keep producing. That happens over long cycles of time. It happens over lifetimes, and it happens over breaths. A series of in breath, held breath, out breath. The mind is always there. And all the vibrations are coming off of all these things. If those vibrations are matter, then they're very dense. If those vibrations are life force, they're subtler. If those vibrations are thoughts, then they're causal. So you have the three worlds built into this package of gross, subtle, and causal. Good thing we have even words in English that can somewhat suggest them. So that's the thing with Naham. Naham, Kaham, Saham. I can tell you out front that Naham is, I'm not anything that's changing, or what is it that I'm not? I might be put in a question. To get to Kaham, well then if I'm not anything that's changing and I've gotten rid of everything that's changing, who am I then? That's where you ask, who am I? After you've taken care of, I am not any of that. I'll show you that very definitely today. And then Saham, I am that. You must say that. In the mother tradition, it would be Saham, I am she. Identify completely with her in your meditations and see what she sees in her meditations, because you know what you see in yours. So try and identify with her. O meditator, become the goddess. You are her essence, as Ram Prasad sings in one of his beautiful songs. So, Divine Mother and called Shaktism then, and Advaita, called non-duality, all predicated on this Raja Yoga, which is the eight-limb yoga. If you study that, because my teacher used to say the West has not accepted Raja Yoga because it's accepted Hatha. But what happened to the other four yogas then? Raja, Karma, Jnanam, and Bhakti. And those are the religion of this age, Vivekananda said. So you can see then what a mistake, what an oversight it has been to go toward the physical, because you're not the physical. And then go towards, like science is going towards energy, see, objects and so forth, arguing whether they're destructible or indestructible. They're neither. They're unoriginated. They come out of the mind as phantoms and go back into the mind and dissolve there. They don't have any substance. So this is matter, energy, and thought, which the Svetasvatara Upanishad states for you. Brahman is not matter, energy, or thought. It really puts it very directly in a Vedantic way of speaking. Advaita would then come along and take that, like it has done with many great souls, from Lord Vishishta to Gaudapada to Ramana Maharshi more recently. has taken up this subject of Naham, Kaham, Saham. So this week we'll look at Naham and all of those things which we are not, that we think we are, many of us. Probably by the billions we think we are these things. They're the most essential. I was just talking about one of my relatives, you see, because had all his work stolen by his bosses in his younger life. So became resentful of that, angry about it, and then was angry most of his life about being cheated by dishonest human beings. But if he hadn't known the world was not real, then he wouldn't have reacted like that. He could have withdrawn from that. So definitely you're not lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride of caste, pride of language, shame, grief. These are called the 6 passions and 8 fetters. Those are not only unreal, they're just not even necessary. They shouldn't have ever come in the first place. If you had have kept your center, then you might have faced off with offenses that the world is throwing at you. But if you know that Prakriti is unreal, that it's rising in and out of your thought process, and that you can get control of this cycle and reduce it to nothing, and then say Saham, you see, or then ask the question, Kaham, who am I now that I see that this is all unreal? Then you've got the gist of what meditation is about. You've got the Raja Yoga, basically, which is meditation. But if you start into meditation, as some religions and some pathways have done, without knowing this essential truth, without renouncing the world, you think it's real, and you go after these things and they turn unreal, then you fall victim to things like the 6 passions and 8 fetters, and bitterness and anger and so forth, shame, grief. So the person who knows the world is unreal and still goes out to fulfill themselves in it is called a dharmi. You see, they're dharmic. I mean, actually I have to be kind of careful of that, called dharmi. I shouldn't say a dharmi, because if you say a dharmi in Sanskrit, it would mean, of course, a person who's not dharmic. So the person who doesn't know that the world is unreal and goes out and tries to fulfill themselves in it, then they suffer these antarayas, these viparyayas, these kleshas, these occult powers, traction to unreal things. And then they get into rounds and cycles of rebirth called in samsara because of that. While the other soul who knew all along the world was unreal, but still went ahead and just fulfilled their destiny in it, was free of that in cycles. We may look at that either this Sunday or 2 Sundays from now, called preparation for battle. I call it preparation for battle. When you find out the world's unreal and you're still holding things that are unreal, then you have to battle them to get rid of them. So it's not that you can just jump from the lowest step to the highest step and expect to attain samadhi or nirvikalpa or sampragyata or satori just like that. It's not going to work. You'll come tumbling down the steps. You have to maintain balance at each one of these steps, and by avastas, Sri Ramakrishna said, go towards the goal. That is, lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Sato ma sadgamaya. Sat is truth. And lead us from the unreal to the real, and so forth, as these famous chants tell us. So, Naham, then, I give you a little taste of that out front, and I point you first to Vedanta's way of showing it, which is quite simple, actually, because some of the subjects of Vedanta can seem abstruse, but there are ways of taking the Vedanta, and Sri Ramakrishna was very masterful at this, and making these abstruse teachings quite simple to understand. And I think the green coconut is one of those. It certainly qualifies for being one of the best examples of what you're not. Because you can see there, and we'll go through it quick because this is an easy study, if you look at the diagram of the coconut there, it's got 5 layers. If you want to be biological and scientific about it, it's the exocarp on the outside. Next layer is the mesocarp. Then the endocarp then the testa, then the meat, then the milk. And Sri Ramakrishna says, let's read his own words about it. The coconut, before it fully develops, and keep that in mind, the coconut is actually you, the soul, you see, the body-mind mechanism. That's you. You're the coconut. You're a coconut. It's like one solid mass before it fully develops. It is only as it ripens that it turns into layers, like the outer shell, the husk, the inner cell, the meat, etc. The innermost kernel is at first indistinguishable from the layers. Later it loosens and it gets free from them. Similarly, the human soul is at first attached to its 5 sheaths, the upadhis that enwrap it: body, energy, mind, intellect, ego. But upon spiritual maturation, the essence within, known by the seers as the Atman, wisely detaches from these coverings and gets free of them. So the person who feels that the body-mind mechanism is real, because the body-mind mechanism is out here too, isn't it? The trees, they're a kind of 5 elements combination: air, earth, fire, water, ether, and touching, tasting, hearing, seeing, smelling, the organs, the sense organs, the objects. This is what they're talking about, is all a part of these 5 layers. So here you can see I've put them across the board. Body is like the exocarp, prana is like the mesocarp, mind is like the endocarp, intellect like the testa, ego like the meat, and awareness is like the milk. But notice that he says, when it ripens, the innermost kernel is first indistinguishable from the layers. So I know this like my female Labrador. When I was younger, we went out in the beaches of Oahu. It would go for a coconut right away. It loved to tear those things apart. So sometimes it would bring me a green coconut that had fallen off the tree too early, and other times it'd bring me like a wooden one, turned brown and everything. So you could take the green one up and you couldn't hear a thing when you shook it. If you take the brown one up, clunk, 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 clunk. There's a kernel inside there that had come loose from everything. So it's not rocket science, I know. I hope I'm not boring you with it. But basically, it's when you give up these body-mind mechanisms as being the non-self, as we'll look at next, then you realize the Atman releases itself from attachment to the other layers. And you won't need a laboratory then to prove it to you and tear it apart in front of you. You can just do it with a machete really quick, actually. The Hawaiians are really good at doing that. They'll just it's like almost painful. They'll just take this coconut up, not quite ripe because the milk is still delicious. And right there in their hand, they'll take this ultra-sharp machete and just go, and you just hope there's not a few fingers down there wiggling around at the end of that. And then they'll put a straw in that little hole that they cut, and you drink it. This is like a really favorite treat for everyone here in Hawaii. Tourists love that. So this gives us an idea, but a little deeper study of it, you can see here, Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, he says, to effectively separate the kernel of a coconut from its shell is practically impossible. But once the milk inside has completely evaporated, the kernel will separate of itself, coming free and rolling around inside independently. So you might say that when the ego becomes ripe, the milk dries up, it's not after anything anymore, except God. Then it will seek the Atman, and the Atman will reveal itself. It'll come free of everything that the unripe ego was still attached to. And even the ripe ego might have had its attachments to. We'll look at this as we look at these teachings about Naham. So here's another way of putting it in more modern terms. The phrase, "it is all one," gets bantered about often by beings who have not yet discriminated between the body-mind mechanism, that's the 5 sheaths, and the Atman, the crucial practice that is known as separating the wheat from the chaff in spiritual circles. Once this viveka is accomplished, the soul comes to know that consciousness and matter are two very different principles and can never be one with one another, just as oil and water cannot mix. Well, look what I have here. We teach the children, right? You're big children, so you don't need to see this, but it's fun. I say oil and water don't mix, so nature and soul, they don't mix. Not a popular teaching. Last couple of days I've seen people walking along the road, one woman carrying a baby on a back road, and there's beautiful, beautiful nature everywhere around. She has no idea, neither does the baby, that all of this is unreal. And not a single idea like that will ever probably occur in her head, or will she teach her child when it grows up that truth, that you are not nature, that nature has come out of you, and so forth and so on. She'll think all her life, and so will her kid probably, that oil and water can mix, that Atman is here in matter. It's not. It can't be here. It's behind it, but it's not here. It can't be matter, energy, or thought. It can't be an object. It can't even be a concept. This is how pure they keep your self, you see. Not your ego self, which is this fifth layer, your real self. So there's going to have to be some heavy separating of the wheat from the chaff here, isn't there, in order for us to realize how sublime, how perfect, be the perfect, the Atman within us is, and that it not only can't be mixed, it's very risky to try. So there it is. See, you say it to the child so that they will know the difference between matter and spirit. And you'll put it down and say, yes, oh yes, Babaji, it mixes. See? And I'll just tell them, and this is the hardest part for them, sit for 45 seconds. Like this. And like 15 seconds go by, they're looking, they're getting fidgety, their legs are hurting, their minds are wandering, and they're looking outside because they want to run back to the unreal. But I've got a lesson for them about the difference between the real and the unreal, so then when they go out into the unreal, they'll know the difference. Then they can get exquisite enjoyment out of their play, not just regular enjoyment that builds habits. So they'll become aware of their true nature. So you can see, oops, sorry kids, 45 seconds is coming around, a minute. Does it mix? Do water and oil mix? No. So I put that in this quote. And Sri Ramakrishna has mentioned that in several cases. So we have these experiments for the kids. And then we say, it's like, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan, Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Came to me last night as I was listening to this hymn for the first time in months on the headphones, and hearing the finger symbols and the tabla in back and the Shakti choir singing the lines. Beautiful, it's like chicken skin, brother, or sister. So that I should sing that today in honor of Sri Ramakrishna, because he's brought back the awareness of Divine Mother, and so many teachings of the Dharma have been clarified in simple ways. So this is a simple way in which we can start out Naham. It doesn't have to be a real difficult process, mentally, intellectually, or philosophically even. It can just be, that's the way Jesus taught, that's the way Lord Buddha taught, it's the way Sri Ramakrishna taught. And if you want to go abstruse on the whole thing, go to your Gaudapadas and go to your Lord Vashistas and satisfy your intellectual, philosophical side of yourself by doing some deep study. It's not going to hurt. It allows to clarify. It'll give you khyati, like the yoga system I was mentioning, Raja Yoga. So it's a beautiful way to start out this teaching of Naham, green coconut oneness. Notice the subtitle, The Problem of the Naive Spiritual View. So I can tell you that our founder, Lex Hickson, and myself used to go around and sing songs like this for people in concerts with Jaima music at all sorts of different religious centers, not just Hindu ones or Vedantic ones, but other places that were open to having us. And we'd always find people with this immature spiritual view. They'd be talking big about spirituality, renunciation, how they're the Atman, and so forth. But their actions would belie their thoughts. And there's a beautiful song about that, actually, that Lex translated in Ram Prasad's poems. If you want to write to me, you can get these and study them with me. But even though their hair is as long as the limbs of a banyan tree, nevertheless, they have no realization within them, these yogis sitting about here and there in India. So there was this idea, Holy Mother said too, there's just nobody like the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. They're automatically knowers of Brahman when they were born, and they don't act like these other yogis that are wandering about the world with no purpose. And Holy Mother said about them, as we said in the car, right? The children of myself and Sri Ramakrishna have not come here to have fun. So they've come here to save those souls that will wake up to these teachings and take them seriously. There's far too much taking seriously of things that shouldn't be taken literally. But you can take these teachings literally. See? And nature will tell you about it, like a bottle of oil and water or a coconut. It's just waiting to tell you about this. Otherwise, it's just a coconut lying on the beach, and you have some pleasure from it. Maybe get some indigestion from it. Pleasure and pain, you see, it's with objects. But there's a big mystery and a secret in everything. The real secret is Saham. Thou art that reality. But until you filter out the Naham from it, because you've been having that for many lifetimes, and like someone said to me the other day, stupid Westerners, you see, why don't they get on the ball and realize this? And then ask the question sincerely, Kaham, who am I then, if I'm not all that? Because we've read the Vivekachudamani, and we can segue into this chart now for that. Shankara wrote this beautiful Nirvana Shatkam, and the verses are all, right out of the Vivekachudamani pretty much, explained by him. So he's telling a student, you're not this, you're not that, and he just goes through the first, 50 or so slokas are about a reading of Naham. Neti-Neti it's called too. And so after each one of these sessions, no matter how long it lasted, because we don't know for sure if it all, he probably didn't give it to him all at once. And then the student comes back and says, I've practiced this Naham, and I see that I've made it all go away. You've convinced me that it changes, so it must not be abiding, it must not be fulfilling if it changes. I can't build my house on sand, Jesus said. I have to find bedrock somewhere. So his student comes back right there in the scripture and asks him this. I see nothing left, so I don't get it. So this is the shunyata phase. Shunyata, the emptiness phase of that process you're going through, which is, that's when you should say, Kaham. You should become so convinced that a ruse has been pulled on you, that a wool has been pulled over your eyes, and that all your ancestors for lifetimes before are busy pulling out over their own eyes and your eyes every lifetime in a culture particularly like this, which in America is, maybe a 3-lifetime culture right now. Europe, you can go back to 2,000 years to Jesus and before. So you have to come very convinced that this wool is being pulled over your eyes, and that you need to have the wherewithal and the strength to tear it away, tear the veil away, and see the truth. Whether it's in a coconut, in a bottle of liquid, hopefully in your Guru and in other great souls, and come out. Why do we love Swami Vivekananda? His brother monk said, why do we love him? Because he was a lion that came out of a cage. There are lions, for sure, other great men, but they don't come out of their cage. Vivekananda came out of the cage of everything. What to speak of nature and all that, of India. He came out of the cage of India, broke it wide open to broadcast his truth, just like Krishna did to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Might as well be the same person. So this we may not get to today, but it's called Preparing for Battle. So Byung had 2 Sundays from now, so I can prepare you for battle. Many of you already started into the battle, and now you want to gain victory over every little thing. What is every little thing? Let's see here in our remaining time. So here you see what's written in the sands of time. It's a chart recently I put out called Not This and Everything Is. So here's the dichotomy. You're a practitioner, you're practicing not this, Neti-Neti. And it's supposed to lead you to iti-iti. Now, you very seldom hear iti-iti spoken. I never heard it spoken by my Swami, by my Guru. Salutations be unto he eternally. But every once in a while you'd hear it spoken in some spiritual circle, you see, that had a mature spiritual view, not those that are holding these immature ones who are afraid to renounce the world. They're glomming onto things with all their might. Buddhists call that selfish grasping. It's one of the 3 great bondages, selfish grasping, in Buddhism. There's an emblem for it. It's so pronounced to them. So this attachment to matter, to energy, and for the intellectual then, the thought, refined thought becomes even a subtle bondage. So this is coming out of the cage really, is that these great souls went beyond the mind and the intellect. How many times I hear my Swami say that? You must go beyond the intellectual frame of reference if you want to get free. And he saw scientists and thinkers in the West, so-called savants, great in their own way, but only around physical matter. They hadn't even yet renounced physical matter. They'd traced it back to its source, seen that it was empty. Kaham. Who am I then if I'm not that? Naham, Kaham. They didn't make the jump the Buddhists made in a recent era. For India, that is. Buddhism is fairly recent. So to make that jump, you'd see the particle of matter, finally, with what other instrument you're using, because better to use this instrument of the third eye than to use an electron microscope made of metal of glass, because you're just looking at Maya through things made of Maya. You want to look at Maya through something that's beyond Maya. And that's always the problem with the mind. It's in Maya. So whenever it tries to study something, even a great philosophy, it's still clutching to Maya to do it. So you could see what a great transformation has to take place in order for the mind to transcend the intellectual frame of reference, especially when you're making your money on that. And you're seeking power through that to dominate over others. This is where it all gets very dicey, and most of the people in the world say, yeah, we don't like that, but they're not going to do anything to stop it, because their food is coming from that, their money's coming from that, and their homes are coming from that, their cars, their gas leaks, all coming from that. So to be a lion and step out of the cage, you're going to have to decry such things and prove to yourself first that I'm not that. I'm none of that. Naham. So Shankara, talking to his student again, when his students say, I did it, I see what you mean, there's an emptiness in there now, but I don't know where to go with it. So it's like, take the outer and the inner. Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayan San Matramanandaganam Vyavayam Samahitas Antir Bahir Antaram Va. Bahir the outer, Antaram the inner. Take those two, don't believe in two anymore. Render them all into one indivisible state. Then pass your time contentedly by meditating on that state. That's what the student has to do next. And then you have to come back to Shankara and say, I am that, Saham. I realized it. I've got it. And this is what we all have to do. We have to do it this lifetime while the getting's good. While the great avatar, Swami Vivekananda, has come amongst us to tell us this. Yes, I say he's an avatar. So, not this and everything is, the subtitle there is the coexistence of emptiness and fullness. We not just trade one in for the other. Like form and formlessness I was talking about at satsang yesterday. Was that yesterday? So soon. They were talking about purnyata, shunyata, fullness, emptiness, form and formlessness. These are these dualities you had to deal with if you're a more advanced aspirant. You might have been a person who was born with a lot of this wisdom hidden. And when some circumstance came up, you met some person, some great person, who just knocked away the dirt from the bulwark. You know what I mean? The farmer digs all these channels from the river to his field. He leaves these little bulks. I don't know what to call them, I guess bulks of dirt. He's not ready to work in the mud inside his field yet. He wants to get his seeds in there first, in the dirt. So when he's got the seeds planted, everything fertilized and all, he takes a stick and just knocks each one of those down. The river fertilizes his field in an instant. A few minutes, it's all wet, you see. So you may be one of those souls that's dug a channel already towards your Atman, and you just have a bulk of Naham sitting in the way, you see. And the Guru says, Naham, you're not that. Here, let me knock that bit of dirt away. And all of a sudden, you're like that water that's going to fertilize the field of your soul. And you make so much progress that lifetime. So this is why you're trying to catch up. That's why I was just saying, you're trying to catch up with yourself. You already know this, but you're refertilizing your field again in this lifetime. Now you've got to reach that essence finally. Water the entire, become infinitely rich with the entire crop already grown in the field of your own consciousness. It's yours. Thou art the mother. You are one with her. She is your essence. You know, how much more simple could someone put it to you? Now you just have to do something to really believe it or accent it. And hopefully, as Holy Mother said, not come here to have fun, but to spread it to others. So the coexistence of emptiness and fullness. One of the beautiful ways I've heard this said, so that, again, we have a simple answer coming from a great soul who's competent in speaking philosophy to the end of time that you couldn't understand. He says, God is not in the world is in God. So when you say the world's unreal, then Brahman Satya Jagad Michya. If you say Jagad Michya to people, they hurt. Not really ready to give it up. I want to fulfill myself in it. I've still got a child. I'm walking through a nice road. This is all going to happen. I've got to fulfill this. Yeah, and then I'll see you next lifetime on this road. Then I'll see you next lifetime. I'll see you next lifetime on the battlefield of Coexistence. You'll be a soldier then too. I'll see you the next lifetime in a battlefield of Coexistence. And it'll be repeating itself. And the Lord is somewhere there, and you're not seeing him and waking up. So how many ages does Vedavyas have to take birth from Krishna's emanation to come back and enact the battlefield of Kurukshetra, to give you the Vedantic message, till finally you're one of those that gets freed from the ocean of rebirth. And you can come back to earth anytime you want after you're freed from it, without any bricks hanging on your tail, without any baggage at the deserted train station at midnight. Right? So God is not in the world. That's what we mean when we say that. The world is in God. So it's not that God doesn't exist or does exist, sat asat. It's that you're just not seeing it all right. And you can't see it right till you say Naham to all this. To such things as your own body. I mean, it's nice we look out here and see nature and can just say Naham, but it's got to get kind of personal when you get to your own body. Because what a frippery civilization they've created. You should see how many instruments they have for painting their face, cutting their hair. Who said that? Yeah, Swami Vivekananda said that. They're very good people, generous to a fault, except for the fact that their God is money. He was the first one to say that. And then later on you find people with immature, outlooks, like the hippies in the 60s and the New Agers in the 80s, trying to mimic him without the full realization and weight behind it that he had. That he was saying these things early on and preparing us for battle that he knew we'd have to face in order to claim our true nature, claim realization of our true nature now, in this very moment. It doesn't exist in the future. It doesn't exist in the past. And it's not in the present either. It's now. The now isn't the present. The present is something that you spend a few minutes enjoying things in. But the eternal moment is something entirely different. You're a witness of everything that's being enjoyed there, not participant in what's being enjoyed. Otherwise, your taste buds, your ears, so this is why Shankara himself has said, they engage in too much noisy sounds. Give up noisy sounds. People are walking around with earbuds on now. Just, the mind listening to whatever is in there, in those little boxes that they're so engaged with. Electronics, matter and energy, basically. Matter and energy, Naham, So God is not in the world is in God. I think I could actually talk on that for days and just go on and on about it. It's such a beautiful saying. You get the right perspective. Doesn't mean God doesn't exist if you hear Jagad Mithya, the world is false. It means that behind everything, that is, if God didn't exist, none of this would exist. But if God exists, so therefore all of this exists too. So that's this coexistence of shunyata and purnyata, of emptiness and fullness. All right, so there you see at the top, Om Mano Bujaham Kara Chittani Naham Nacha Shrotra Jive Nacha Grana Netre. Om Mano Bujaham Kara Chittani Naham Nacha Shrotra Jive Nacha Grana Netre. Nacha Vyoma Bhumir Na Tejo Navayu Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. Then Nacha Prana Sango Navai Pancha Vayu Nava Saptadatu Nava Pancha Kosha. Right? Nava Pancha Kosha. Not the 5 sheets. 5 Pancha Koshas. Right? Navak Pani Padam Nacha Pastapayu. None of the 5 elements, none of the senses, you see. So in these verses, he goes through all of this. And I could sing it all for you. It would take far too long. It'll be on a YouTube video before too long. And then you can listen to it. Basically, you see in white there. What am I not? Naham, says Shankara to his disciples in 700 AD when he was just in his 20s, and they were in their 70s, 80s. This young man teaching these graybeards, you're not the mind, intellect, ego, and thought. Mano buddha hamkara. Memorize that word. 3 words, but he puts it together in one. Mano buddha hamkara. That starts very high. Vedanta cuts very high. You see. I mean, being in India and saying, bartering with people. Well, offer me something for that. You want that bell? You don't want to pay 200 rupees? What would you offer? I said, how about 25? Oh, sir, you cut way too high. So, so Vedanta starts you right off with mind, ego, intellect. That's a very high thing to start with. If you could actually do that, all the rest I'm about to tell you would go away. You wouldn't think you were them. Because it's the mind, ego, intellect that's projecting all this. God isn't doing it. Mother isn't really doing it. She's in charge of it. But you're doing it. This is a mass collective mental dream. That billions of souls, that's a lot of power, are engaging in mental projection. Sankalpa, Vikalpa. What does Krishna say about it in the Gita? Nobody become a yogi without giving up sankalpa and vikalpa, Arjuna. So he's already preparing him for that kind of battle on the battlefield. Not just the physical battlefield, that's going to pass in a few weeks, but this battlefield that he has to battle with Maya in his own mind in order to get Brahman back, in order to realize his own Atman again. It's been stolen from him. There are songs about this. Well, then, nacha shrotra jivu, not jive, nacha grana netre, the 5 senses and and their functions. The karmendriyas, the rasendriya and the gyanendriyas. The 5 senses could say 10, but he gets to that. Also, nacha vyoma bhumir, that's and nacha teja vayu. So not ether, earth, fire, air, or water. Not the 5 senses. 5 elements. See? So you see how he does it in order. He could have just started you at a lower level as if you were a spiritual infant. Let's give up the 5 elements first, and he'll show you how to connect those to the 5 subtle elements, tanmatras. Let's start with your 5 senses, your karmendriyas. Let's show you how those connect to your gyanendriyas. And we can give them up involution style, right? 5 into 5 into, so pretty soon you come out with 25 or 24 famous ones. But no, you want to say it all came from the mind. This is an Advaitist teaching Sankhya. This is an Advaitist teaching yoga. What else? 2nd verse, nacha prana sango, I'm not life force or vital breath. Not the body, the elements, or the sheaths. Nacha panchakosha. Navakpani padam nacha pastapayu. I'm not hands, feet, or bodily organs. As Vivekananda would say in his translation, not the organs of sex or voiding. So that's 2nd chakra kind of stuff, see. Name dvesha ragau, name loba moha. Now remember, this is all written on the sands of time. There could be probably nothing more ancient than deserts. Even mountains have crumbled into them and have added to them. So you're looking at deserts. They know this in Arabia and places where most of the terrain is desert. So somebody has written there, like Divine Mother has written ruins, or written Sanskrit, or written Latin, or written Persian into the sands of time, which are really in your mind. These are lands in your mind, and you have to somehow get that writing to appear again. See? It's like magic pen. We write something down and disappears, you see. Put something on it, comes back. See? So it can be done. So this is what we're talking about, not only with Shankara, but with Hastamalaka, which I'm getting to. And with very little time to do this, I want to move through it. You're getting a good gist of it here. So, Name Dvesha Ragao, Name Lobha Moha, not the 6 passions or the 8 fetters. Remember I mentioned them: lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, and so forth. See how that comes far after the mind? If you were to get rid of the mind, would you get angry? Would you get jealous? Would you be covetous? Or would the mind know, that I'm not even the mind I'm using? Mind must know that it's not itself. That there's an ego in the mind somewhere that thinks it's itself, and it's causing the mind and intellect to dance to its tune. But there's something called the ordinary mind there, but there's something called original mind. There's something called the unripe ego there, but there's something called the ripe ego. There's something called the mind's lower thoughts, and there's something called living intelligence in you. We're getting to that. So, not aversion or attachment or small self. Reading more in the sands of time here, you can see down here the palm tree, and below it the insignia. The words of the prophets are written on the desert sands. It's a famous statement. You even heard it in the 60s in a famous song by a pop group. The words of the prophets are written on the desert sands. Something like that, you see. There was the tenement halls or walls or something. But this is the idea. The words of these prophets are written in a very ancient way on these sands of time that are constantly shifting, and the wind's constantly blowing them. Found that nice image of all these wind-blown. See how it almost looks like writing, that image? And there's an oasis there, Hopefully that you can reach it through all that. Then he sings, Yata Darpa Na Bhava Abhava Honao. Well, let's see here. No, I went to the Hastamalaka. Na mantro natirtam na veda na yagyaha. Not the mantra or the scriptures, nor the shrine, nor the sacrifice. Now you're getting kind of personal into the priest's realm. What do you mean I'm not those things? I make my money from those things. Or, I want to keep my shrine, and I want to keep my identification with that church and that religion. But Shankara doesn't care. He's giving you the truth here, and he's the one to give it. So he's not even a mantra. I remember my teacher used to say, because later on he says, na guru na shishya, and Swami Sheshananda said, this is the best of India. Best that India ever gave was right there in the 6 verses. But I don't agree with no guru, no disciple. So he wasn't ready to let Westerners think that they could jump to a high step. You see, although he knew it was true, pretty soon he'd go beyond guru and disciple. But he championed Holy Mother and held her as his ideal his whole life. All 90 years or more of his life, Holy Mother was his ideal. And he was never going to give away guru, even after he got enlightened. Why would you burn a bridge like that? Especially if you had to come down and do work here again. Aham bhojanam naiva bhojanam nabokta. I'm not the food, nor its enjoyer. So from mind down to food, see how far he's come with these old 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya Yoga, that we can take an old warhorse chart and look at if you want, and how Shankara himself divided it into 3 bodies, gross, subtle, and causal. Another way of looking at what's being said here, but this is very direct and quick. Then, penultimate verse, na mrityur na shanka na me jati beta, my favorite line of the whole 6 verses. Na mrityur na shanka na me jati beta. What's mritya? Death. and birth. So he says very beautifully here, in Swamiji's translation, he says, "Death nor fear I have none, nor any distinction of caste. Neither father nor mother, nor even a birth have I. Nor friend nor comrade, neither disciple nor guru." And I won't say the last line yet. So, yeah, all of those things. The way I'd like to put that is that, you cannot die because you were never born. That's the way I put that. You cannot die because you were never born. I mean, you can face off with death and somehow maybe win the battle in some way. But if you just say, I never had a birth, that puts it all to rest. Name jati beda. I have no caste, no birth. That puts death out of reach of you. So I am the birthless ajati. This is one of the great pillars of Advaita. I am the birthless one. Never a birth had I. And as he's about to tell you, if I can get to it today, Hasama Lakastotram, I have nor father, nor mother, nor child, nor children, nor friends, nor companions. He goes right on down and sings it too. The two stotrams, marvelous put together. Nirvana Shatkam, more recent times, like I said, 700 AD, but this was Shankara's disciple after him. His name was Hasta Amalaka, means fruit in the palm of your hand. So he saw the truth as clearly as, after Shankara taught him, as you could see a fruit in the palm of your hand. Holy Mother loved this teaching and used it herself. And he's the one that, as a youth, didn't speak until he was, a teenager. Shankara blew through town, as it were. The father of this Brahman priest boy took him to Shankara. Shankara looked at him and said, "Who are you?" And he jumped right to Kaham with him, probably because he had already fertilized his field in another. And now Shankara was breaking that bulk for him. See what I mean? And the nadi would open up and he'd remember everything from his past lifetime. This is a big part of our tradition. It's in the Gita. So, here in the West, it's fanciful to think that we had other lifetimes. You hear him mention it glibly. But in India, they've known this as a fact in relativity for thousands and thousands of years and maybe even cycles. They always come back telling you this. They know about where the soul goes when this goes away, when the coconut gets burnt or chewed up by a huge cosmic Labrador. They know where the soul goes. It goes back through nadis, into the heart or into the throat. These are bodily representations. I had to write to someone just 2 nights ago. Say, well, the body is you have to live a lifetime in the body 3D because all the chakras are there. And, I wrote him back, I said, the seers don't agree with you, sorry. The chakras are not in the body. They're in the great ether, the great mind. This is only an outer representation of them. You can't get a tuning fork and tune a chakra. You can't get a set of colored pencils and color a chakra. You can't breathe a chakra straight or asana it straight. This is absurd. Don't you know what spirituality is? It's beyond these body-mind mechanism. There's no spirituality for the body-mind mechanism. There's just ignorance. And you better throw it up. I could sing you a verse from the Abhidhamma. It says, these worlds are not for us. It's the ignorant mind that vomited them out. He actually uses that. It's the ignorant mind that vomited them out. See, they spewed them out. So if you're trying to hold oil and water at the same time, good luck with that. You should just realize that you're the essence of awareness, which is what we're coming to here. So namrichorna shanka natme jati beda. Then he says vibhu tvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam. So I'm not the senses, I'm not salvation or liberation. He gets to that in a minute. Nor am I knowledge and its knower. Then aham nirvikalpa. So this is where across the board just says, who am I then? Chidananda rupaha shivaham shivaham. Chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham. Then what am I if I'm not all these things? I am this, it says, I am pure consciousness, pure bliss. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. And so that, I didn't go through that line in these, as I took you through these 6 verses, because that's the surprise, that's the essence of it all. You go through all that Neti-Neti to get to this. And who am I then is in between. It's almost incidental, but people have taken Ramana Maharshi's teachings and others, just like they've taken Hatha Yoga and so forth, and they've made it the all and everything about it. Anyone can say who and I. Owls can say it. They never get enlightened. So, you have to do the Naham, the groundwork, and if you don't realize that you're none of this, and you don't automatically say, what am I then? Saham, then the Kaham question will be a matter of a day or 2 or a month. Who am I? Oh yeah, I got it. It's not going to take you a long time to figure out who you are. Then when you say I am, you mean it. Well, then when you say I am that, tatvamasi, that thou art, then you mean it. Because you've got proof for yourself behind it. What's that called? Shravana, Manana, Nididhasana. Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava. Then you've got that third thing, or spiritual experience. Anubhava. You've got it when you say it, and you just say it once or twice. This was the way it was in ancient India. Whispered it into the mature student's ear, and he went into samadhi, and he sat there for some hours just in the wonder of it, in the bliss of it, in the peace of it, in the love of it. Then where will all your problems be? Swami Vivekananda says, when you realize that, then where will all your problems be? Your lust, your anger, your envy, your jealousy, your pride, your enjoyments, your sufferings, your lifetimes, your deaths. Then what will happen to them when you sit in that eternal moment? Let's look at, side by side then, at Hasta Amalakas. I've just taken you through the Nirvana Shatkam of Shankara in a short time. I want to put that on a YouTube video so that we can pore over it more. But this is already on. That's already on a recording. So this is Hasta Amalaka Stotram. You remember what it sounds like probably. Naham manusho nacha deva yaksho na brahmana kshatriya vaishya shudra na brahmachari na grihiva nasto bhikshur na chaham nija bodha rupa nimitam manas chakshuradi pravrita nirastakilo padiyakasha kalpaha ravir lokachesta nimito tatayaha sa nichopalabdis swarupahamatma sa nichopalabdis swarupahamatma So Shankara's student says very beautifully about this, and you could see it written on the desert sands there. I am not human, a god, or a celestial. So he covers three, you might as well have put ancestors in there. He covers three strata of living beings there. Because Shankar has just asked him, well, who are you? Well, I'm not a human, a god, or a celestial being. The first words he ever spoke. His parents went, you know, why didn't you speak for us over 14 or 15 years? We got our son back. So they took him home that night, but it was too late. They wanted to make him into that Brahman priest. You can chant now. You know, you need to chant to be able to be a Brahman priest. A couple of days later he tells them, well, Mother, I'm leaving. I'm going with him. And that was it. He took off, never to return. Shankara had to do that with his mother too. I'm not a priest, a warrior, a merchant, or a worker. Then he gets into the caste level of things. I'm not a monk, a householder, a hermit, or a wanderer. Then he gets into the sannyasin level of things. And I won't give you the last line yet. Then he sings, which I sang already, anything terrestrial or empirical, I'm not. Beautiful, you know. Nothing of the outer worlds or even the inner worlds, nothing of the empirical, what goes on here in this world. Both of those two worlds, I'm not of that. They're not in me, I am not in them. I am not in time and I do not occupy space, is what I sang. I have no limitations or conditions. So you can see how he thought about his teachers. Very easy and straightforward expose on non-duality. And he came up with a way of saying it to his generation and to the further students that Shankar had gathered before he left at 32 years of age. And gave it to them in this way, and gave it to us as a result. That worked its way down to us through Ramakrishna order. The third verse, because we whipped right through these, you see, I have no attributes. Yamagnushnavat nicha bodha swarupam. I have no attributes, is basically what he's saying. He also, I have no sleep, I have no multiplicity. So you're getting this, I hope, that this was very direct based on tattvas known that are familiar to everyone, but that they don't know. They know, they're familiar with air, earth, fire, water, and ether, but they don't know them. They're familiar with tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling, but they don't know them. The knower's not there. It's blind, it's random. The world is that way, societies are that way. Whole religions fall because of that. Cycles go on, ending in destruction and dissolution in that vein. I am not objects, minds, or senses. Well, now he comes down to earth a bit, to his teacher's sayings. And then the next verse, not reflections or superimpositions. So now he's getting you into the word is vivarta. You see, false superimpositions or reflections, adhyasa. I am none of those. I am the essence. Things reflect off me. I'm the lake that things reflect in. I'm not the reflection itself. I am not the worlds, nor am I the universe. I am not living beings, nor death. I'm going through these verses quickly. I have no form, and I I have no appearances. I am not matter or phenomena. I have no movement or any vibration. That's all just undertaken by me. You see, Brahman is nameless, formless, actionless, and divine. It doesn't move. It doesn't have to because it's everywhere. Something that's all-pervasive does not need to move from one place to another. That's called the 4 feet of Brahman, Brahmapada, by the way. It gets around how? How does Brahman get around in you, if it moves at all? Through 4 things, at least 3 of them. Waking state, dreaming state, deep sleep, and then turiya, when it becomes stationary again. This is how it checks into all beings, through Divine Mother, I would say. This is how she knows all things, from Lord Brahma down to a blade of grass, the Upanishad says. It's through their states of awareness. What else? How else would she know so thoroughly? She knows you to the very essence of your being. Till you'll have to say, I am your essence. She is my essence. Like Ramakrishna would say, I don't even know who she and who I am anymore. I don't see any difference between the 2 of us. And he really knew this and felt it. Movement and vibration, 2 of our favorite ways of talking about. I am not sensations, conceptions, or processes. This gets very valuable. Processes, people are very much into processes. Going to school they're called bardos in Tibetan Buddhism. I want to get into this process, start it, live it, see it through to the end, and then get whatever out of that process that I thought was valuable and extract it, you see. But again, if you're doing that consciously, it's entirely different than not. And what does that mean? I'm doing it knowing it's all unreal. It really comes down to Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya. The world is unreal. Only Brahman is real. If you know that, you can do anything, go anywhere, but it's all an illusion to you. It's all a dream. You don't take it seriously. And thou art that through the whole thing. You go everywhere without forgetting that you are the self in all. Say peace to all, no danger be, from me to aught that lives, from those who dwell on high to those that lowly creep. I am the self in all. All worlds, both here and now and there, do I renounce. All earths, all heavens, all hells, and all hopes and fears. Thus be thou calm. Sannyasam bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. Tat Sat Om, I am that. That's why we start Om every verse, end Om with every verse with Om. So sensations, conceptions, processes, very well put. Non-existence, I have none of that. Of course I exist. I exist beyond existence and non-existence. And dependence, none. Prana, unconsciousness, ignorance, not in me. They're in Maya. Origination, this is where it gets very beautiful. Origination, because everything's unoriginated. According to his teacher's teacher, Gaudapada, was Shankara's student's student, you see. And in between them was the father of yoga, unbeknownst to everyone, Govindapada. That was Patanjali come again. And so the father of yoga was a student of the great master of Advaita Vedanta, who then taught Shankara, who then brought Advaita Vedanta to everyone in such a way that you could comprehend it. Whether you accept it or not, it's going to be another thing. It's up to you. But this is truth. This is what was called truth, is what is called truth. And the fact that it's alien to you, or it hurts a little, or it's stark, surprising, it's just an indication of how long we've been without it. How long it's been since anyone like a Vivekananda came and told it to us. So origination, one of our favorites, here's where you get the other pillar of Advaita, right? That we got one of them up here, I'm not birth, no death. Now you get the other pillar down here from his student, Hastamaloka. Not thought or imagination, that's that sankalpa problem. Imagination has gotten a hold of the West, America particularly. Thanks, Walt Disney, for all the crap you filled our heads with back when I was in the 60s. When people were running to their TV sets to look at Mickey Mouse and Goofy and things like that. Goofy, that was a good name for the whole thing. And people are like all sensitive about that. You say, oh, Walt Disney, I grew up with that. Oh my God, I grew up with Gaudapada. You gotta have like the Itihas of India, have it like Vivekananda's mother read to him when he was a boy. He was drinking it in. And look what he turned out, how he turned out. Also voidness, nothingness, vacancy. That kind of idea, that does not make sense to me. I avoid the void. Yeah, I avoid the void. It doesn't make sense. It exists because sometimes it will seem like there's a void. It's called pralaya. But I'm the witness of that. Why? Because it has a name, and that word is uttered by me. I pronounce the void, it'll be a void. If nature abhors a vacuum, all of a sudden things will be full. That's you that's doing that. But you project it and withdraw it. Don't get so serious about your creation, because creation is not happening. Projection is happening. And then you withdraw it. And this is going on in so many cycles that you forget this until you feel like you're the body again and you're having problems with 5 sheaths. You're a coconut all of a sudden. Suddenly Bob realized he was born as a coconut in Hawaii. It's not a good thing, you see. Finitude and sentience is his next verse. Tangibility and karma, impurity and taint. None of these I am. Upadau yata bedatas samaninam. So you see he's using upadau now, the upadis, right? So in this particular line he goes, and I'll take you through just parts of this. We could do a retreat on it if you like. But this is this name and form idea, namarupa, that I've crafted out of my mind's conception, this 5-fold body-mind mechanism, and then I put my consciousness into it, like milk in a coconut. Developed it for a while, then it deteriorated, the milk dried up, and I died, you see. So I was a brown coconut, But I never identified with the kernel rattling around inside at the end of the whole process. That I have nothing to do with death. I am the essence of everything, in everything. Transformation, well, here comes, another pillar of Advaita Vedanta, a parinama, or parinama in this case. No, I don't transform. Anything that transforms is not Brahman, so I give it up. That's a big Naham at a high level to get over transformation. Like chemists, scientists, biologists, they can't get over that one. No, they're in it for transformation. They've got to see change because their life is meaningless without it. It's meaningless. So only the seer will want to get beyond change and see the purity of the self. No form, no name, no impurities, no karmas, not the void, not illusion, no delusion, no varieties in it that it identifies with. It's not dark, it's not nescience, it's not gross and subtle senses, it's not perceptions. In fact, I think I left that. Oh, that's coming up. So let's go on to that one. It's not sight, seeing, and seer. That's a triputi at a very high level that you're going to have to naham before you can really ask the question, who am I? Because if you say, who am I, and you still believe in what you're seeing, and you believe you're the seer, and the act of seeing is important, then you haven't got the Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, or Brahmagna, or Brahmanahutam realization yet. That Brahman is all that. The act, the eating, the food, and my teacher told me that. Aham bhojanam naiva bhojana bhokta. I'm not the enjoyer of the food, nor the offering of the food. So there are people who got into that, thinking, oh, this will make me more conscious if I'm more conscious of my food. But to be more conscious of your food, most conscious of your food, is to know that you're not the enjoyer of it, because enjoyment is a quality, and I just said I don't have any qualities. Atman doesn't have any qualities. There's no tasting and touching in it. I just said that. You see, you always have to pay it back and to the touchstone I was saying yesterday. There's this miser's touch, you know, the gold of a thing. You see, you've got to keep that sacrosanct and always run everything back to it. So that's Naham and Kaham. When you say, who am I? Oh, I just gave that up, you see. See, as you say, who am I? Maya's going to run forward. Oh, I'll tell you who you are. You know, besides a big, no. I'll tell you who you are. You know, you're all these things, right? No, I did my Naham. I'm none of that. My teacher can corroborate that, and I'm in the process of affirming that for myself. And I'm about to realize Saham. And then Maya will not touch me anymore because Maya is not real. Not the dual mind, nor the intellect, nor sight, nor seeing, nor seer. I'm not touch or imagination. I'm sorry, thought or imagination, nor perception, perceiving, and the perceptor. So dualities disappear, triputis show up, is how I like to say it. The dualities like good, bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, virtue and vice, you know, get thee behind me. I get pretty easily, if I'm an intermediate practitioner or an advanced state, I can pretty much naham that, you see, neti-neti it. But this is going to take me, when these triputis come forward, it's going to take me a little bit more deep consideration. I've got to contemplate these. Because it's in the contemplation of I'm not the perceiver that you'll realize the witness. The witness consciousness itself still has a little residue of I am the witness in it, you see. The last tendrils of the ego saying I am, you know, I own, I possess, I exist even. So existence and non-existence would be a very high duality, form and formlessness. So that's where you're getting into some very deep manana, you know, that you would sit under a tree for 49 days to clarify, or go into the wilderness for 12 days and 12 nights to clarify. Because Maya is very strong that way. Your ancestors have taught you that way. Worlds are living, societies, whole societies are living in that way. They have no idea of the truth. And how can you convince them of it? You can't. A few souls are going to have to awaken. Who are those going to be? You determine it. So no transformation, no resistance or impedance, and no modifications are there. And that brings us to these final quotes so we can end this class. And these are by our beloved Sri Ramakrishna. But before I do that with Hasta Amalaka, then I have to say, what am I then? If he's taking us through all those, he goes, Ikshorna Naham Nijabodha Rupa Ravir Loka Chesta Nimita Pravritra Nirastakapadir Akasha Kalpa Ravir Loka Chesta Nimita Tatayaha and Pravartantashrita Nishkampam Evam. And through all of those third lines, he gives you that hint till finally he comes and he says, Sanicha Palabdis Swarupohamatma Sanicha Palabdis Swarupohamatma. Om. So unlike Shankara, who just saved it for the end of each line, he infers along the way these things. Sanitya Palabdha Swarupadham Atma and all its concomitants. I am the ever-conscious eternal self, infinite and pervading everything. That light I am, pure and boundless, attributeless and free. That self-aware entity am I, sublime and indivisible. And that limitless self am I, identical with the Supreme Being. All that is left is oneness, the eternal abode, my true existence. That perpetual being am I, self-effulgent, illuminating the cosmos. That one and I are identical, non-different, inseparable. He comes at it from different angles. That one and I are non-distinct and form one cohesive unity. That self and I are one and the same, free of divisions. We, that one, is undeniably whole, which is the pervasive condition in everything. That one and I, that one am I am that one. There can be no other. So he sings beautifully, Sanicha Palabdis Swarupohamatma. Om Sat Vidya Bhavana Bhava Vidyate Sataha. The unreal never is, the real never ceases to be. The truth about both of these has been realized by the seers. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.